Dylan Raiola, it is trending, Joe, could be flipping his commitment from the University of Georgia to Nebraska. Now, calm down. Let's see how this goes. But let's talk about the possibility. Joe, there's a lot of smoke around Dylan Raiola flipping his pick to Nebraska. As we mentioned earlier, look, man, this kid's got a lot of ties to Nebraska. Matt Rule is doing everything they want. And you know what, Joe? Look, we talked to a couple of Nebraska fans on here, at least I have. They are yearning for a winner. They are really yearning to be good again, to get back to prominence. Getting a quarterback under Matt Rule like Dylan Raiola, and by the way, they might even add Kyle McCord, put you so much in a different stratosphere, Joe, from where they have been to where they are. Because, look, year one under Matt Rule, they played pretty good defense. They weren't that bad. They maybe some skill positions away and a quarterback away, maybe being an 8-9 win team. I think, look, they play tough. They play physical. Defensively, they were okay. Look what they did against Iowa. And look, you can say what you want about Iowa. Iowa's still a 10-win team, right? Like, they're still won 10 games in the Big Ten. Would be massive if they could pull off Dylan Raiola, though.
So there's two things to really focus on here. One, what does this mean for Nebraska? What does this mean for Georgia? Dylan Raiola is one of the highest graded kids and the top rated quarterback in this class. A lot of shades of Quinn Ewers, Patrick Mahomes. It's a very common trend these days to highly rate these kids that are good improvisers, that can throw on the run, that have, really good velocity on their footballs. He is a transcendent quarterback prospect. I'm not going to go as far as to say that, this is a surefire first overall pick. I think that it's a little bit of a step too far, but he's still somebody who can step in and play at a high level and very positively impact your team's success. I look at Nebraska's situation for them to bring home a kid who has family ties. His father played there. His uncle is on the coaching staff. For all of that to come through and for him to be a part of this football program absolutely changes the trajectory of the program. We look at what Arch Manning has done in terms of just general name recognition and focus and how much we've talked about Texas and his eventual impact as a starter. It's tremendous. And the same thing here can happen with Dylan Raiola because he's so highly talked about. And even if he doesn't play up to the ceiling that we've set for him, he's still going to give Nebraska a lot of positive attention. I think that this would be so huge for them, man. And I think that when you get somebody like this, Raiola is good enough to attract top receivers in the current class and the next recruiting cycle in 2025 to be enticed to come play for the Cornhuskers. That's how impactful of a guy like he is.
Specifically a wide receiver, right? Like, I mean, you could probably add, show that at minimum, Joe, you get in the door with some receivers maybe that you weren't initially going to get in the door with. But look, I'm going to throw this out here to Georgia fans, okay, that will listen to this or listen to it now or listen to the clip. Dylan Raiola is at Buford, okay? Is playing football at Buford, transferred in. But KJ Bolden, the safety, Joe, is also a safety from Buford who is committed to Florida State. Now, Kirby went home with him a couple of days ago, I saw, trying to get that flip to Georgia. But look, two of the top three kids in your state, in the state of Georgia, play at Buford. One of them might be out the door, and one of them's committed somewhere else. So I do think that maybe the entire state of Georgia is going to blacklist Buford if their two top recruits, two of the top three, I should say, go somewhere else, not named the University of Georgia. But look, what does this mean for Georgia? You talked about Nebraska. Changes absolutely nothing for me. Like, literally changes nothing for me when it comes to Georgia. When you are winning 2 national titles with a walk-on, Joe, they had one loss this year with Carson Beck. Carson Beck's probably going to come back, and the likelihood, Joe, that they could go on to a run next year and win a national title in a 12-team playoff is astronomically high. Dylan Raiola, you could go anywhere else, okay, maybe not named Alabama, LSU, maybe even Auburn, okay, that rightfully plays Georgia every single year to some extent, maybe not LSU and Alabama, but those two teams play next year. If he goes outside the SEC, it doesn't bother them. Nebraska's not going to be on the pace with Dylan Raiola that Georgia is. Georgia can what's the word I'm looking for here, Joe? They can or the expression, maybe I should say, they can take this loss, right? Like Dylan Raiola could go somewhere else. Now, you don't want that high star of a quarterback going somewhere else. But I'm not worried about Georgia winning or losing football games because Dylan Raiola goes to Nebraska.
Right. I agree with you on that. And this is what I was leading into earlier. Yes, as a Georgia fan, you should feel a little disenfranchised that the kid's not coming. It's always exciting when you pull the top quarterback recruit, no matter what year it is, who the kid is. It's always exciting. And it's always nice to point to and say all of the top players at most of the top positions want to come play and be a Georgia Bulldog. But as I said earlier, Ryan Puglisi was already committed before Dylan Raiola committed. He was already a part of this recruiting class. He's a high 4-star. I listen to a lot of recruiting podcasts because I like to kind of get that sense of like who those next guys are. What's that next wave of players coming in, those next prospects. And a lot of the things that I've heard on Puglisi is that some people actually think and thought there was a possibility that Puglisi could have beaten out Raiola when it came time for the two of them to compete for the job, and Raiola would have transferred. There was even some speculation that maybe Raiola went to Georgia for a year and then ended up transferring to Nebraska, kind of like what we saw happen with Quinn Ewers. He's that big of a name that one might assume and might say that it could benefit him to end up leaving if he doesn't get an early path to becoming the eventual starter. Puglisi is a really talented player, very, very talented player. I would not be upset if I lose Dylan Raiola. This isn't a circumstance like last year where I think of like Dante Moore was committed to Oregon, last second changes his mind, goes to UCLA, and then Oregon had to figure out last second who was going to be their next guy. They already have someone committed. And Puglisi wants to be a Georgia Bulldog so bad that he stayed committed this whole time, no matter what.
Well,
so
look,
I'm not worried.
Georgia's recruited really well at that position too. I mean, so again,
yeah, they've got good depth.
Yeah, and that kid probably wants to play like, hey, let me sit behind Kyle McCord for a year and then take a red shirt if I can. And then next year, unless injury happens, I'm going to sit a year. I think it's smart for both. I don't say it's smart for both parties, but it's smart for Raiola. And look, he can transfer. If it doesn't go well there, he can always transfer to Georgia, right? Like, I mean, it's not like this is an end-all, be-all type of situation here. So,
BetOnline remains your top spot for all of your live betting action and contests. NFL, college football, UFC, NHL are all in full swing. BetOnline is your number one source for wagering news, odds, trends, and predictions with both desktop and mobile access at any time. Head to BetOnline today and use promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for 50% off your first deposit. That is a 50% welcome bonus. Bet online, where the game starts.